The weight
Let's
of
just
invisible
all calm
chains.
down and talk this through.
The gallery opening was supposed to be a celebration of emerging designers, and Maya had spent 3 weeks curating the perfect outfit. A minimalist black column dress with pearl accents, understated elegance that whispered rather than screamed. She'd felt beautiful that evening, confident in her choices, until Dmitri arrived. "You look like a funeral attendant," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear, though the sting was loud and clear. He pulled her closer to the crowd, his hand on her lower back more like a leash than an embrace. "Maybe next time you could try looking like you actually belong here." Maya said nothing. She never did. Speaking up only made things worse. Dmitri would spend the rest of the evening reminding her why her opinions didn't matter, why her taste wasn't refined enough, why she should be grateful he was even with her. 2 years of this. 2 years of shrinking herself, of apologizing for her presence, of believing that this was what love looked like. They stood in front of a striking abstract piece. Geometric shapes in deep blues and golds, something that spoke to Maya's soul immediately. She felt the pull of it, the way it made her think differently about color and space. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's pretentious garbage," Dmitri replied, not bothering to lower his voice, "just like most of these amateur attempts. I don't understand why you waste your time looking at this stuff. You'll never understand real art anyway." Maya's throat tightened. Her fingers curled into small fists at her sides. That night, when they returned to his apartment, Dmitri fell asleep immediately. Maya sat on the edge of their bed in the darkness, listening to the city breathe outside the windows. She thought about the abstract painting, about how it had made her feel seen, valued, like her instinct mattered. And she thought about how Dmitri had made sure she felt the opposite. At some point, in the quiet hours before dawn, something shifted inside her. Not dramatically, not with anger or tears or any of the fighting he always accused her of being too emotional about. Instead, something simply settled. A quiet knowing that had been building beneath her skin for months, maybe years. She didn't need his permission to leave. She didn't need an argument or an explanation or his agreement that she was right to go. She didn't even need him to finally understand what he'd done wrong. She just needed to walk away. When the sun rose, Maya moved methodically through the apartment. She gathered the few possessions that were truly hers, her design journals, her sketches, her grandmother's vintage scarves. She left a note on the kitchen counter, brief and final. "I deserve more than this. I hope you find peace." She didn't wait for a response. She simply closed the door softly behind her and stepped into the morning light, leaving behind everything that no longer served her soul. For the first time in 2 years, Maya breathed freely.
Maya had been in her new studio apartment for 3 days when the call came from her manager at the boutique. "We have a last-minute project," Gabriella said, her voice bright with opportunity. "A tech company is redesigning their executive offices. They want someone who understands luxury, restraint, and innovation. I immediately thought of you. The client is Cassian Rousseau, the billionaire entrepreneur." Maya's heart gave an unexpected flutter. She did know of Cassian Rousseau. Everyone in the design world knew of him. But she'd actually met him once, months ago at an industry gala. He had approached her while she stood alone, admiring the architecture of the building rather than mingling with guests. They'd talked for nearly an hour about the interplay between space and emotion, about how design could make people feel seen or invisible. He had been kind, attentive. He had asked her questions and actually listened to her answers. It was the last thing she remembered before Dmitri had found her and pulled her away. "When does he want to meet?" Maya asked. "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. His private studio building downtown." That night, Maya barely slept. She selected her outfit with care, a charcoal blazer, cream silk blouse, tailored trousers, professional, confident, herself. The studio building was all glass and light, a testament to Cassian's philosophy that beauty and function weren't opposing forces. Maya took the elevator to the 43rd floor, her portfolio in hand, her mind sharp. Cassian was waiting by the floor-to-ceiling windows when she arrived. He turned, and recognition flickered across his face immediately. "Maya," he said, And the way he said her name, like it mattered, like he genuinely remembered, made something in her chest ache. I wasn't sure if you'd be the one sent. I'm glad you are. They talked for hours. Cassian showed her the space, raw, enormous, full of potential. But more than that, he listened as Maya articulated her vision. He didn't interrupt. He didn't dismiss. He asked thoughtful questions that showed he was actually considering her perspective. At one point, he caught him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're different," he said quietly. "Since the gala, there's something lighter about you. Freer." Maya hesitated, then decided to tell him the truth. "I left my relationship recently. Very recently." Cassian's expression shifted to something like tenderness. "I'm sorry you were in something that dimmed your light, but I'm glad you found your way out." He invited her to his private lounge for coffee. They sat in a space designed for contemplation. Soft lighting, comfortable silence, the city sprawling beneath them like a promise. When Maya felt tears threatening, Cassian simply slid a box of tissues across the table without comment, then looked away to give her privacy. "You're going to be okay," he said after a while. "Better than okay. I think you're going to be extraordinary." Maya believed him. The next morning, photographs appeared online. Maya leaving Cassian's building, Cassian holding the door open for her, the angle of their bodies suggesting something intimate even though nothing had happened except conversation and coffee. Within hours, the headlines exploded across social media. "Mystery woman captivates tech billionaire Cassian Rousseau. Who is she? Internet obsessed with Cassian's new muse. Billionaire's mysterious companion spotted leaving private studio." Maya's phone began ringing. Dimitri's name appeared 17 times. 17 times she ignored it. Then the messages started. Dimitri was furious, unhinged. He called her a gold digger, a whore, a pathetic woman trying to climb the social ladder. He posted old photos of them together, claiming she had cheated, that she was unstable, that he had left her because she was damaged goods. Maya read the messages once, then blocked him everywhere. 2 hours later, Cassian called her directly. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice steady and sure. "I've seen what he's saying. None of it is true, and everyone who matters will know that." "How do you know that?" Maya whispered. "Because I know you. Or at least, I know enough to recognize truth when I see it. And you, Maya, are radiating truth." That evening, Cassian did something bold. He posted a single photograph on his verified account, Maya at the charity gala next week, where he had already invited her. The caption read, "Looking forward to tonight's event with someone truly exceptional. Judge people by their character, not by rumors." The narrative shifted. Twitter erupted with support for Maya. Women shared their own stories of leaving situations that diminished them. Magazines began calling her a symbol of quiet strength. Dimitri's toxicity became irrelevant in the face of Maya's rising light.
6 weeks into the office redesign project, Maya realized she'd fallen in love with Cassian Rousseau. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There was no single kiss or grand gesture that crystallized it. Instead, it had accumulated slowly, in the way he listened without judgment, the way he championed her ideas, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in any room. They were working late in his private studio, samples of Italian marble and Belgian fabrics spread across the enormous glass table. Maya was sketching a new concept for the executive lounge when Cassian suddenly stood up and walked to the window. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "Something I've never actually said out loud before." Maya set down her pencil, her heart quickening. Cassian turned to face her, the city lights casting shadows across his face. "When I was 22, I wanted to start a tech company. My family, my father specifically, said it was the stupidest decision I could make. He was a banker. He believed in stability, predictability, family businesses. When I refused to join his firm, he told me I was ungrateful and delusional." He paused, and Maya saw the old pain cross his features. He disowned me, literally cut me out of his life. My mother and siblings followed his lead. I spent years telling myself it didn't matter, that I was too busy building my company to feel lonely. But the truth is, I was terrified of ever needing anyone again, of being abandoned for being myself. Maya stood and walked to him, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "How did you survive that?" she asked softly. "I didn't survive it. I just constructed an elaborate wall and called it survival. Until you walked into my life and somehow made me want to take that wall down." He reached out, his fingertips brushing her cheek with such tenderness that Maya's breath caught in her throat. "I'm terrified," he whispered, "that I'll hurt you, that I don't actually know how to love someone without eventually pushing them away." Maya's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. "I'm terrified too," she admitted, "that I'll slip back into being small, that I'll lose myself again, that you'll realize I'm not worth the complication." "That will never happen," Cassian said, and he drew her closer. "Maya, you are the most resilient, thoughtful, authentic woman I've ever known. You walked away from something that was killing your soul. That takes more strength than most people have in their entire lives." He kissed her then, slowly and deliberately, as if imprinting the moment into his memory. It wasn't desperate or demanding. It was a promise. It was recognition. It was the first time Maya had felt truly chosen. When they pulled apart, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, the words simple and certain. "I don't need you to say it back. I just needed you to know." But Maya's heart was already speaking for her. "I love you too," she whispered. That weekend, Cassian surprised her. He'd arranged a private escape to a coastal villa, a space designed entirely by a famous architect for contemplation and rest. They spent 2 days walking through gardens, reading in comfortable silence, talking about everything that mattered. Cassian told her about his business philosophy, that he'd built his company on the principle that innovation should serve humanity, not the other way around. Maya shared her childhood dream of becoming a designer before Dmitri had convinced her it was frivolous. "We're going to bring that dream back," Cassian said, pulling her into his arms on the villa's terrace as the sun set. "And this time, it's going to be yours alone, not something you do for me or anyone else, something you do because you deserve to create beauty." Maya's best friend Isla called that night, and Maya could barely contain her joy as she told her everything. "He's different," she said. "He actually sees me, the real me." "I'm so glad," Isla replied warmly. "You deserve that. You deserve everything, Maya." For the first time since leaving Dmitri, Maya actually believed it.
3 months after their first kiss, Cassian presented Maya with an opportunity that changed everything. They were in his penthouse, morning light streaming through windows that overlooked the entire city. Maya was curled into the corner of his sofa, sketching ideas for the tech office project, while Cassian reviewed business proposals at the opposite end. It was their favorite way to spend Sunday mornings, working separately but together, existing in comfortable companionship. "I have something to show you," Cassian said, setting down his tablet and moving toward her with an intensity that made her look up. He handed her a leather portfolio embossed with a single word, "Verdant." Inside were architectural renderings of something extraordinary, a luxury resort sprawling across private coastline, designed with principles of sustainability and human connection. The spaces flowed organically, each room and corridor intentionally crafted to make guests feel valued, understood, seen. "This is my next major project," Cassian explained, sitting beside her. "And I want you to be the creative director. Complete autonomy. Your vision, your voice, your design philosophy at the heart of everything." Maya's hands trembled as she turned the pages. Cassian, this is enormous. I'm not ready for something like this. You are, he said firmly. Maya, you redesigned my office in a way that people are calling revolutionary. 3 major design publications want to feature it. Your work is being discussed in boardrooms and studios across the country. You're ready for this. More than ready. But about us, Maya asked, her old fears surfacing. Won't working together constantly blur the lines? Won't it complicate things? Cassian took her sketching pencil from her hand and set it aside, then took both her hands in his. Maya, our relationship isn't fragile. It's not going to shatter under the weight of collaboration. If anything, building something together makes it stronger. But only if you want that. I'm not asking you to choose between your career and me. I'm asking you to let me support you while you become everything you're meant to be. Tears welled in Maya's eyes, but these were different tears than she'd cried with Dmitri. These were tears of hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want this. The next 8 weeks were the most creatively fulfilling of Maya's life. Cassian arranged for her to have her own design studio, a sprawling space in a historic building downtown, flooded with natural light and filled with every tool and resource she could possibly need. The studio became her sanctuary, a space where her vision could materialize without compromise. Cassian would often arrive in the afternoons with coffee and fresh pastries, watching as Maya worked with architects, sourcing craftspeople, selecting materials with meticulous care. Her design philosophy was becoming clear: spaces that honored human dignity, that celebrated authenticity, that reminded people they mattered. One evening, as they reviewed color palettes for the resort's main pavilion, Maya realized something had shifted within her. The anxiety that had plagued her for years, the constant voice telling her she wasn't good enough, that her ideas were foolish, that she should make herself smaller, had become almost inaudible. "I'm happy," she said aloud, surprised by the revelation. "I'm actually genuinely happy." Cassian looked up from the fabric samples, a smile spreading across his face. "I know. It radiates off you. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed." He stood and pulled her to her feet, drawing her close. His hand splayed across the small of her back, steady and sure. "May I?" he asked, tilting his chin toward her lips. Maya nodded, and this kiss was different than their first. It held knowledge of each other, comfort, deep affection. When they pulled apart, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. "I want to build a life with you. Not just a project, a real life. With all the mundane and beautiful details. Waking up together. Late-night conversations about nothing important. Traveling to places you want to explore. Creating things together and apart. All of it." Maya's breath caught. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking for forever," Cassian replied, his dark eyes intense. "But I'll take moving in as a very good start." 6 months later, the resort design was unveiled to the design world and beyond. Architectural magazines called it a paradigm shift in luxury hospitality design. Critics praised Maya's ability to create spaces that felt both refined and deeply human. The resort became the most exclusive destination in the world, not just because of its beauty, but because guests felt genuinely valued there. Maya's work was featured on the covers of prestigious design publications. She received offers from luxury brands around the world asking her to consult on everything from flagship stores to private residences. She turned most of them down, choosing instead to be selective, to work only on projects that aligned with her values and vision. But the most significant moment came during an interview with a major design publication. The interviewer asked Maya about her transformation, about how she'd gone from relative anonymity to being one of the most influential designers of her generation in less than a year. Maya smiled, thinking of Dmitri's attempts to control her, to diminish her, to make her believe she was nothing without him. "I didn't transform because of a man. I transformed because I finally believed in myself. Cassian didn't save me. He supported me, and there's a crucial difference. He believed in my vision when I was still learning to believe in myself. But the belief in my own worth, that came from me, from the courage it took to walk away from a situation that was killing my soul. The interview went viral. Women around the world began sharing their own stories of walking away, of choosing themselves, of refusing to shrink for anyone. Maya's story became a symbol of quiet revolution, the radical act of a woman simply deciding she was worth more. Cassian watched all of this with profound admiration. One evening, as they lay in bed in their shared apartment, he pulled Maya close and whispered into her hair, "I'm so proud of you. Not because of what you've accomplished professionally, but because of who you've become. You've given yourself permission to be exactly who you are." Maya turned to him in the darkness. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," Cassian replied gently, "but I'm grateful I got to witness it anyway."
The Quiet Revolution of Love, Part 5, The Choice, Made with Certainty. The rooftop garden of Cassian's penthouse had become their sacred space, a place where they could exist separate from the world, where the city sprawled below them like a living, breathing entity. Maya stood at the edge of the terrace, her silhouette outlined against the amber glow of sunset. She wore a simple dress in deep emerald, her hair loose around her shoulders. Cassian watched her from across the garden, his heart full in a way he'd never imagined possible. She turned to him, sensing his gaze. "You're staring," she said, a smile playing at her lips. "I'm memorizing," Cassian replied, walking toward her. "Is that allowed?" When he reached her, he took her hand, her fingers fitting perfectly within his, and guided her to the edge of the terrace where the city stretched endlessly before them. "Maya," he began, and she heard the gravity in his voice. She turned to face him fully. "From the moment I met you at that gallery gala, I knew you were extraordinary, but I didn't know you were going to change my life." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small black box. Maya's breath caught. "I'm not proposing marriage," Cassian said, and Maya felt a flash of confusion, at least not in the traditional sense. Marriage is just a legal acknowledgement of something. What I want is so much deeper than that. He opened the box to reveal 2 rings, matching pieces in white gold, each carrying a single stone that caught the fading light. But they weren't diamonds. They were something rarer, 2 fragments of meteorite set into the metal. "These are from the same meteor," Cassian explained softly. "Separated in space and time, but originating from the same source, forever connected even when apart, and each one is complete in itself. It doesn't need the other to have value. It only becomes more beautiful when they're together." Tears streamed down Maya's face as Cassian continued. "Maya, I'm not asking you to walk toward me because you're afraid of being alone. I'm not asking you to give up yourself or diminish your dreams. I'm asking you to choose a partnership where we build something extraordinary together, where you remain wholly yourself and I remain wholly myself, but we choose every single day to intertwine our lives." He took her left hand gently. "Will you choose me, not because you need me, but because you want to?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes. Yes, Cassian, I choose you. I choose us. I choose this." Cassian slipped the meteorite ring onto her finger, and Maya did the same for him. They stood together as the sun descended below the horizon, the city lights beginning to twinkle like earthbound stars. That night they made love with a tenderness that spoke of complete trust, of knowing another person so deeply that vulnerability became strength. They moved together with the ease of people who had learned each other's rhythms, who could communicate without words, who had built something sacred in the space between their bodies and their hearts. 6 months later, Maya stood in her design studio, reviewing final touches on a new project, a women's shelter designed with the same principles of dignity and beauty that had defined all her recent work. Cassian was in the corner, on a video call with his business team, but he kept glancing at her with a smile that made her feel seen. Their engagement announcement had been released that morning, and it had generated significant media attention, but not in the way Maya had feared. Instead of focusing on Cassian's wealth or status, the narrative was about two people building something together. The headlines read, "Power couple Cassian Rousseau and Maya Verlaine announce engagement, a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared vision." But what moved Maya most was the response from women around the world. Thousands of messages flooded her social media, women sharing their own stories of choosing themselves, of walking away from situations that diminished them, of refusing to shrink for anyone. One message in particular caught her eye. "You didn't just design beautiful spaces, you designed a blueprint for loving yourself. Thank you for showing us it's possible." Maya saved that message in a folder she'd started, a collection of stories from people whose lives had been touched by her journey. That evening, Isla came over for dinner. As the three of them sat on the rooftop, sharing wine and conversation, Isla looked at Maya with such genuine joy that Maya felt tears prick her eyes again. "You did this," Isla said firmly. "You walked away. You chose yourself. Cassian came into your life because you were already whole. Don't ever forget that." Cassian squeezed Maya's hand, and she squeezed back. A year later, the luxury resort opened to international acclaim. The opening gala was attended by architects, designers, celebrities, and influencers from around the world. Maya walked the grounds with Cassian, both of them dressed in elegant formal wear, both of them radiating the quiet confidence of people who had built something meaningful together. But the most beautiful moment came at the end of the evening, when Maya stood alone on the resort's main pavilion, the space she'd envisioned and created. Guests had departed, and the only sound was the gentle crash of waves against the shore. Cassian found her there, and he wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You did this," he whispered, "all of this. Your vision, your strength, your refusal to accept anything less than beautiful." Maya turned in his arms to face him. "We did this together. But you're right that I did something else too. I chose myself first, and that choice made room for you, for us, for all of this." They kissed as the moon rose over the ocean, two whole people who had chosen to build something extraordinary, not out of need, but out of genuine, radical love. Maya's journey hadn't been about being saved. It had been about saving herself. And in doing so, she had discovered that true love wasn't about finding someone to complete you. It was about finding someone who celebrated the completeness you'd already claimed.